A millionaire businessman dresses up as a common man to visit his own luxury store and find out how they really treat their customers. But when he reveals who he is, an unexpected confrontation leaves everyone silent and changes everything forever. Lucas straightened his simple suit jacket and looked at his reflection in the glass of a nearby storefront. His appearance revealed no hint of the man he was, a successful businessman who had built one of the most recognized luxury retail chains in the country. That morning, he had decided that he would not arrive in his fancy car or his usual impeccable suit. He wanted to blend in, to observe without interference. He walked through the automatic doors of the store, immediately noticing the change in the atmosphere. The scent of exclusive perfumes filled the air, mixed with the echo of discreet conversations. At first glance, everything seemed perfect. Impeccable display windows, lights that highlighted the shine of expensive jewelry and fabrics, and perfectly uniformed employees. However, Lucas soon detected something different, something hidden beneath that polished surface. With a calm step, he walked over to a counter where an employee was talking to a customer. Despite his humble demeanor, he did not go unnoticed. Several glances fell on him, some quick and others more curious. Lucas noticed some whispers between two customers, both elegantly dressed. His eyes, full of curiosity, landed on the worn jeans and the unbranded t-shirt. As he stopped in front of a mannequin displaying a perfectly tailored suit, he heard a murmur behind him. A couple inspecting expensive watches glanced at him sideways before returning to their conversation. It was as if his mere presence altered the harmony of the room. Lucas, without hesitation, walked through the aisles. He observed in detail not only the products, but also the interactions between employees and customers. He noticed how the salespeople rushed to serve those who showed obvious signs of wealth, while others with more modest appearances seemed relegated to the background. Suddenly, his gaze met that of a tall, well-dressed man. Paulo, the manager, glanced at him briefly before turning his attention elsewhere. Lucas noticed the insecurity in her gaze, as if she was already evaluating him but didn't dare approach him. Every step he took seemed to accentuate his invisibility, or perhaps just the opposite, the suspicion that he didn't fit in. Lucas smiled slightly to himself. He had come looking for answers, and the show was just beginning. With one last glance at a display case full of watches, he approached the center of the store. He felt like an actor in a play that no one knew was being performed. As Lucas examined a pair of leather shoes in a display case, he heard a shrill laugh echoing from a few feet away. Turning, he saw a tall, elegant woman with perfectly coiffed hair and a designer dress. She looked him up and down with a mixture of disbelief and contempt. "Wow, that's really interesting," he commented in a tone loud enough for everyone around him to hear. "Who knew they let someone in now?" Lucas glanced at her briefly, without saying a word, and continued scanning the section, as if he hadn't heard. However, Carla, clearly offended by his indifference, decided to intensify the attack. "Maybe he's looking for inspiration for a flea market," he added, prompting a few stifled chuckles from other customers. A few employees exchanged odd glances, but none of them intervened. Carla approached, stopping a few feet away from Lucas. With a dramatic movement, he pointed to the suit he had been looking at earlier. "That's beautiful, isn't it? Although I doubt it's your size or your budget." For a moment, silence filled the atmosphere. A few customers stopped to watch, while the staff seemed to debate whether to intervene or stay away. Lucas slowly turned to Carla and gave her a slight smile. "It's an excellent suit." "The quality is obvious," he replied calmly, ignoring the provocation. Lucas's slow, polite tone seemed to disconcert her. Carla, accustomed to dominating any situation with her presence and words, was not prepared for such a calm response. But far from stopping, he continued. "Quality? Of course, that's what you're looking for, right? Although I wonder if you know what that means." At that moment, Paulo, the manager, appeared at the back of the room. He was watching the scene, but seemed undecided about how to act. The dominant posture of Carla, a regular customer with high purchasing power, kept him still. Meanwhile, Lucas kept his expression calm, although his mind was working quickly. It wasn't the first time he had faced a situation like this, but the reactions of the people around him revealed much more than Carla could have imagined. I think some people don't understand that certain places aren't for everyone," Carla concluded with a sarcastic smile, looking at Lucas as if she had won the battle. However, Lucas simply nodded, as if in agreement, which only increased Carla's frustration. When she pulled away a little, he stood there, aware that the tension in the room was only beginning to grow. Paolo, the store manager, watched the situation from the background with a mixture of discomfort and apprehension. From the moment the plain-looking man entered the store, something didn't seem right. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was something wrong. Something in her bearing, in the calm way she moved and observed, that made him doubt his first impressions. However, Carla's attitude complicated matters. She was a frequent customer, known for spending considerable amounts of money at the store. Paolo knew that any confrontation with her could become problematic, not only for the reputation of the business, but also for his own position. As Lucas walked through another section, Carla continued talking loudly enough for everyone to hear. Her sarcastic comments were interspersed with laughter, some of her own and some from nearby customers. The employees just watched or pretended to be busy, clearly uncomfortable. Paolo took a deep breath, trying to decide how to act. She knew that ignoring the incident could be seen as neglect, but she was also afraid that intervening might anger Carla. With slow steps, he approached the center of the store, where attention was already fully focused on Lucas. "Is everything okay here?" he asked in a neutral tone that sought to avoid conflict. Carla turned to him with a wry smile. Paolo, I'm glad you're here. I was going to suggest you take a closer look at who you let into the store. It seems like the level of exclusivity has dropped lately." Paolo felt a knot in his stomach. Carla's words had hit him hard, but he knew that facing her was not an easy option. He turned his gaze to Lucas, who remained calm, examining a clock in the window as if nothing was happening. "Excuse me, sir. Can I help you with anything?" Paolo asked, trying to sound professional. Luke looked up and looked directly at him. His eyes showed a calmness that Paul did not expect, as if he was carefully evaluating him. "Thanks, I'm just looking for it now," Lucas replied politely. The interaction made Paolo even more insecure. His instincts told him that he should intervene to prevent the situation from getting worse. But at the same time, Carla remained close by, watching him with an expression that almost demanded his loyalty. "Well, if you need anything, don't hesitate to let me know," Paolo said, stepping back a little. Carla let out a short, mocking laugh. "Oh, really? Are you offering help?" "I think it would be more helpful to show the result." Paul felt a growing pressure in the environment. His mind tried to find a quick solution, but something in Luke's expression stopped him. There was a calm in him, which was disconcerting, almost as if he was in control of the situation without having to say a word. Carla, now more confident due to Paolo's passivity and the occasional laughter from other customers, decided to take the situation a little further. He stood in front of Lucas, blocking his access to the counter, where he was looking at some elegant watches. His expression reflected a mixture of mockery and disdain. "You know, I think we've been too nice to you," he said, crossing his arms exaggeratedly. "It doesn't seem fair that someone like you is here, taking up space that could be used by someone who actually values you." Lucas looked at her, keeping his expression calm. "Someone like me?" he asked slowly. Carla smiled condescendingly, as if enjoying the attention her little scene was attracting. "Well, I don't know. Maybe someone who doesn't show up dressed like they just came out of a mechanic's shop," he replied, causing more discreet laughter around him. A nearby employee made a move to intervene, but Paolo gave him a look that stopped him. The manager still didn't know how to handle the situation, but he couldn't afford to upset Carla. Lucas picked up one of the clocks from the display case and examined it carefully, as if Carla's words didn't affect him. "This design is quite elegant," he commented calmly, turning it over in his hands. Lucas's disinterest in the provocation seemed to infuriate Carla even more. He took a step forward, further reducing the distance between them. "Classy?" he repeated ironically. "Please don't make me laugh. You have no idea what that word means. Let me guess, you're here because you thought you could impress someone with your superficial knowledge?" The air in the tent grew thicker. The staff looked on sideways, unable to intervene, and some customers watched with a mixture of curiosity and embarrassment. Lucas turned to Carla, returning a look that, although calm, seemed to contain a depth that Carla could not decipher. Interesting perspective, he replied. Is that what you mean by elegance? Lucas's calm tone, combined with the firmness of his words, seemed to momentarily cut Carla's confidence. However, he quickly regained his composure. What I understand, he said emphatically, is that this place is not for everyone. And I think we're all thinking the same thing here. True? He added, seeking support from the others present. The response was an awkward silence. Some customers looked away and others, like Paolo, remained motionless, afraid of what might happen if the tension continued to rise. Carla, feeling that she was not receiving the support she expected, turned her attention to Paolo. Don't you plan to do something? He demanded. This man clearly shouldn't be here. Paolo hesitated, his words caught between the desire to calm Carla and the growing intuition that he was making a mistake by ignoring Lucas. But before he could respond, Lucas calmly raised his hand. No problem, he said, stopping the pressure on Paul. I'm just observing. The simplicity of her words, spoken with a calmness that defied Carla's aggressiveness, left everyone momentarily in suspense. But Lucas knew that the climax of the situation was near. The tension in the store was palpable. Carla, although clearly frustrated at her failure to intimidate Lucas, was unwilling to give in. Paolo, for his part, stood on the sidelines, unsure of how to deal with the escalating situation. Meanwhile, Lucas remained calm, as if everything was part of a plan that only he knew. After a few moments of awkward silence, Lucas took a step toward the center of the room. Excuse me, he said, addressing Carla and the employees. I would like to speak to the owner of this store. The request, made in a slow but firm tone, left everyone in a state of astonishment. Carla, unable to contain herself, burst out laughing, which echoed throughout the place. The owner? He repeated sarcastically. Oh, of course. And what's next? Are you going to buy from the store? Please stop this farce. The employees exchanged nervous glances. Paolo stepped forward, trying to take control of the situation. Sir, with all due respect, I'm not sure if it's possible to contact the owner at this time. Perhaps we can help you with something else, and he said, trying to sound professional. Luke kept his gaze fixed on Paul, and then something happened that no one expected. Paul, right? He asked with a slight smile. The manager nodded, surprised that I knew his name. I would appreciate it if you could confirm my identity before assuming I'm not relevant here. The entire room seemed to stop. The calmness in Lucas's words, combined with the confidence in his tone, began to plant doubts in the people around him. Paolo frowned as if trying to remember something. It was at that moment that recognition occurred. Paolo's eyes widened in surprise as he realized who was in front of him. Mr. Lucas, he said in a barely audible tone, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The silence that followed was deafening. Carla looked at the manager and then at Lucas, as if trying to process what had just happened. Mr. Lucas? He repeated softly, his confidence wavering for the first time. Paul, now fully aware of his mistake, was quick to adopt a more helpful stance. I am very sorry I did not recognize you before, sir. Please allow me. Lucas raised his hand, signaling for him to stop. No need for apologies, Paolo. I was just here as another customer. His tone was gentle, but there was a firmness in his words that made it clear he was not pleased with what he had witnessed. Carla, who now looked small and disoriented, was desperately searching for an excuse to justify her behavior. I had no idea. I thought, he stammered, losing all his arrogant attitude. Lucas looked directly at her, and for the first time, his unchanging calm seemed to transform into a presence that dominated the room. That's the interesting thing about respect, he said in a voice that resonated in the room. It shouldn't depend on who you think I am, but on who you are. The impact of his words hung in the air. Carla took a step back, unable to look at him. Paolo, with his head down, seemed to want to disappear. Meanwhile, employees and customers remained silent, absorbed by the unexpected revelation. Lucas stood still for a moment longer, letting her words sink in before taking the next step. Lucas stood in the center of the store, watching the atmosphere change dramatically. The air, heavy with tension, was now filled with an uncomfortable silence. Carla avoided his gaze while Paolo tried to regain his composure. Composure. The employees and customers, previously mere spectators, were hanging on every word he said. Calmly, Lucas turned to Carla. His posture was relaxed, but his gaze had an intensity that didn't require him to raise his voice to be noticed. "Jumping," Lucas repeated with a reflective tone. "Doesn't seem like it was just a joke." Carla opened her mouth to respond but stopped. Her earlier words, spoken with such confidence and contempt, now seemed to come back to confront her. Lucas turned his attention to the customers watching from a distance, their looks reflecting discomfort and embarrassment. "I'm not a person who usually teaches," Lucas continued, "but today I think the situation demands it." He paused, making sure every word was felt. "Respect is not a luxury. It should not depend on how you look, what you are wearing, or how much you can spend. It is a basic principle that should be applied to anyone who walks through that door." As he spoke, his voice remained calm, but his message carried a weight that resonated throughout the store. The employees, who had been standing on the sidelines until then, began to lower their heads as if Lucas's words were also directed at them. Carla, clearly uncomfortable, tried to intervene. I didn't mean to. Maybe I was wrong, but..." Lucas gently raised his hand, stopping her. "I'm not here to judge you," he said, "but to point out something I've seen all too often: superficiality disguised as exclusivity. And that's not what I want for this place." The employees exchanged glances, clearly shocked by the clarity of his words. Some customers muttered amongst themselves, while others remained silent, pondering. Paulo took a step forward, still nervous. "Mr. Lucas, I want to apologize on behalf of the entire team." "That's not necessary, Paul," Lucas replied, turning to him. "But I hope you'll take note of what happened today. This isn't just about one customer or one manager. It's a cultural problem that we have to change from within." Paul nodded quickly, feeling the weight of the responsibility that Luke had just placed on him. Lucas turned his attention to Carla, who now looked smaller than ever. "I hope this incident has served you as well as it has served me. After all, we all have something to learn." Carla, not knowing how to respond, nodded awkwardly. For the first time, she seemed to have completely lost the confidence that had characterized her minutes before. Lucas took one last look at the presents before taking a step toward the exit. The store, which had initially been filled with murmurs and laughter, was now immersed in a silence that spoke louder than any words. When Lucas stepped out of the spotlight, the weight of his words continued to resonate in every corner of the store. The awkward silence persisted, but something changed. The looks, previously full of mockery or indifference, now reflected introspection. The employees began to move cautiously, resuming their tasks, but their gestures betrayed a feeling of discomfort. Some customers, unable to bear the stuffy atmosphere, chose to discreetly leave the store. Others remained there, observing Carla, who remained static, with her head down and her lips pursed. One of the saleswomen, a young woman named Sophia, approached Lucas timidly. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "Mr. Lucas, I would like to apologize. I couldn't intervene before. I didn't know about this." Lucas interrupted her with a friendly gesture. "You don't need to apologize to me, Sophia, but to yourself. Never let fear stop you from doing the right thing." Sophia nodded, visibly moved. His words seemed to have a profound effect on her, as if they had touched a chord she had long ignored. Paulo, who was mentally organizing what he was going to say, finally gathered the courage to approach. "Mr. Lucas, I promise this won't happen again. I will personally take care of it." Lucas interrupted him with a slight smile. "I'm not here to find someone to blame, Paulo. I'm here to learn and to make sure everyone here can learn too. This place represents more than expensive products. It represents values." Paul nodded slowly, understanding that the message was not just a criticism, but also an opportunity. Meanwhile, Carla began to move towards the exit, trying to go unnoticed. But the weight of the gazes continued to be on her. Some employees and customers murmured among themselves. Others simply watched as he tried to avoid eye contact with anyone. Just as he was about to walk through the door, Lucas spoke again, this time addressing everyone in the store. "Today was an important day, not just for me, but for all of us. Everyone has the opportunity to reflect on what happened here. And I assure you that for me, this is just the beginning." Carla paused for a moment, clutching her bag tightly. Although he didn't say anything, It was clear that his emotions were running high. Finally, he left the store without looking back, leaving a sense of relief in those who witnessed the scene. Lucas turned to Paolo and the rest of the team. Tomorrow we'll schedule a meeting with the entire team. I want to hear your ideas on how we can make this place more than just a store, something really worthwhile. The employees nodded, some even showing a spark of enthusiasm at the prospect of participating in positive change. Lucas took one last look around the store before walking toward the exit. Inside, she felt like she had planted a seed, but she knew the real work was just beginning. Carla walked out of the store with quick steps, her heels clicking on the marble floor of the mall. Her face was red, not so much from embarrassment, but from the mix of anger and humiliation she felt. She clutched her bag to her chest, as if that gesture could protect her from the weight of the eyes she still felt fixed on her back. Inside the store, the murmurs grew louder. Some customers commented on what had happened, while the employees who had previously been passive witnesses seemed more determined to take a different stance. Carla's departure did not bring immediate relief, but it did bring a strange sense of justice. Lucas remained in the store, walking between the windows as if nothing had happened, carefully observing everyone's reactions. Sophia, still nervous, approached cautiously. "Can I help you with anything else, sir?" he asked, his voice now firmer than before. Lucas gave him a brief smile. "I'm finishing observing. Thank you, Sophia." The young woman nodded, clearly relieved by Lucas's kindness. Deep down, Paolo was trying to mentally reorganize his priorities. What had happened had left a lesson he could not ignore. Meanwhile, Carla, who hadn't gone far, stopped at a nearby corner. He took out his cell phone and started typing frantically. His first reaction was to vent on his social media, but thinking about the impact this could have, he put the device away with a sigh of frustration. "I won't stay silent," she thought, although deep down she knew that any attempt to justify her behavior would only sink her further. Back at the store, the energy began to shift. A customer who witnessed the entire incident approached Lucas. "Excuse me, sir, I want to tell you that what you did was admirable. I think it made many of us think." Lucas nodded in thanks and responded calmly. "The important thing is not what I did, but what each person decides to do after that." The words resonated with the employees, who began to move with more determination. The atmosphere was no longer charged with tension, but rather with a renewed intention to improve. Carla, meanwhile, walked toward the parking lot. Each step made her feel smaller, less secure. Although his pride prevented him from accepting it, Lucas's words sank deep. He reached the car, a gleaming luxury sedan, and paused before getting in. He looked at his reflection in the window and for the first time questioned who the person he saw really was. Inside the store, Lucas took one last look around the space, satisfied with what he had managed to plant. Before leaving, he addressed Paolo. "You have a unique opportunity here. Take advantage of it." Paul nodded firmly. As Lucas walked out the automatic doors, the store fell into a new kind of silence, not of discomfort, but of reflection. The next morning, the store woke up with a different energy. The employees, still shocked by the events of the previous day, arrived on time, some even early. The rumor of the meeting that Lucas had announced spread quickly, generating a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Lucas arrived shortly after, this time in a more formal but still discreet attire. His presence, although calm, had a weight that filled the space. He was placed in the center of the main room, surrounded by employees, while Paolo stood to the side, ready to take notes. Paul nodded slowly, understanding that the message was not just a criticism, but also an opportunity. Meanwhile, Carla began to move towards the exit, trying to go unnoticed. But the weight of the gazes continued to be on her. Some employees and customers murmured among themselves. Others simply watched as he tried to avoid eye contact with anyone. Just as he was about to walk through the door, Lucas spoke again, this time addressing everyone in the store. "Today was an important day, not just for me, but for all of us. Everyone has the opportunity to reflect on what happened here, and I assure you that for me, this is just the beginning." Carla paused for a moment, clutching her bag tightly. Although he didn't say anything, it was clear that his emotions were running high. Finally, he left the store without looking back, leaving a sense of relief in those who witnessed the scene. Lucas turned to Paolo and the rest of the team. Tomorrow we'll schedule a meeting with the entire team. I want to hear your ideas on how we can make this place more than just a store, something really worthwhile. The employees nodded, some even showing a spark of enthusiasm at the prospect of participating in positive change. Lucas took one last look around the store before walking toward the exit. Inside, she felt like she had planted a seed, but she knew the real work was just beginning. Carla walked out of the store with quick steps, her heels clicking on the marble floor of the mall. Her face was red, not so much from embarrassment, but from the mix of anger and humiliation she felt. She clutched her bag to her chest, as if that gesture could protect her from the weight of the eyes she still felt fixed on her back. Inside the store, the murmurs grew louder. Some customers commented on what had happened, while the employees who had previously been passive witnesses seemed more determined to take a different stance. Carla's departure did not bring immediate relief, but it did bring a strange sense of justice. Lucas remained in the store, walking between the windows as if nothing had happened, carefully observing everyone's reactions. Sophia, still nervous, approached cautiously. "Can I help you with anything else, sir?" he asked, his voice now firmer than before. Lucas gave him a brief smile. "I'm finishing observing. Thank you, Sophia." The young woman nodded, clearly relieved by Lucas's kindness. Deep down, Paolo was trying to mentally reorganize his priorities. What had happened had left a lesson he could not ignore. Meanwhile, Carla, who hadn't gone far, stopped at a nearby corner. He took out his cell phone and started typing frantically. His first reaction was to vent on his social media, but thinking about the impact this could have, he put the device away with a sigh of frustration. "I won't stay silent," she thought, although deep down she knew that any attempt to justify her behavior would only sink her further. Back at the store, the energy began to shift. A customer who witnessed the entire incident approached Lucas. "Excuse me, sir, I want to tell you that what you did was admirable. I think it made many of us think." Lucas nodded in thanks and responded calmly. "The important thing is not what I did, but what each person decides to do after that." The words resonated with the employees, who began to move with more determination. The atmosphere was no longer charged with tension, but rather with a renewed intention to improve. Carla, meanwhile, walked toward the parking lot. Each step made her feel smaller, less secure. Although his pride prevented him from accepting it, Lucas's words sank deep. He reached the car, a gleaming luxury sedan, and paused before getting in. He looked at his reflection in the window and, for the first time, questioned who the person he saw really was. Inside the store, Lucas took one last look around the space, satisfied with what he had managed to plant. Before leaving, he addressed Paolo. "You have a unique opportunity here. Take advantage of it." Paul nodded firmly. As Lucas walked out the automatic doors, the store fell into a new kind of silence, not of discomfort, but of reflection. The next morning, the store woke up with a different energy. The employees, still shocked by the events of the previous day, arrived on time, some even early. The rumor of the meeting that Lucas had announced spread quickly, generating a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Lucas arrived shortly after, this time in a more formal but still discreet attire. His presence, although calm, had a weight that filled the space. He was placed in the center of the main room, surrounded by employees, while Paolo stood to the side, ready to take notes. "Thank you all for arriving on time," Lucas began, his tone warm but firm. "What happened yesterday was a reminder that we need to make profound changes, not only in our customer service policy, but in the culture that defines this store." He paused, looking at each of the employees. Their faces reflected attention, some with nervousness, others with genuine interest. This is not just a luxury store, it is a space that should make every person who walks through the door feel valued. It doesn't matter how they dress, how much they spend, or where they come from. That is what truly defines the quality of our service. Sophia, who had been listening with special attention, timidly raised her hand. "Mr. Lucas, I think you're right, but how can we achieve this change? Sometimes we feel like we're under a lot of pressure to achieve certain goals, and this makes us forget what's most important." Lucas nodded, appreciating the honesty of her comment. "I completely understand. The pressure to achieve goals can be an obstacle, but it should not be an excuse to compromise our values. That is why, starting today, I want us to work together to define new care policies. Lucas pointed to a nearby table where he had arranged a set of notepads and pens. I want each of you to write down an idea, something you think could improve the experience of your customers and yourself in this space. The employees exchanged surprised glances. They had not expected to be an active part of a solution, much less to have their opinions directly sought. There are no small or wrong ideas, Lucas added. This is a space to be honest and creative. Gradually, the employees approached the table and began writing. Some took the process immediately to heart, while others seemed to hesitate before expressing their thoughts. Paul, watching from the sidelines, was inspired by the initiative and decided to join in as well. After a few minutes, Lucas took the notes and placed them on the table. Thank you for sharing your ideas. We will review each of them and implement them into a plan that reflects our new values. This won't be an overnight change, but if we all work together, we can make it happen. The room was filled with murmurs of approval. For the first time in a long time, the employees felt their voices were being heard. Remember this, Lucas concluded, looking at everyone seriously. True luxury is not in the products we sell, but in the experience we offer. The meeting ended with spontaneous applause, a sign that something new and positive was beginning. Lucas left the store that morning, knowing that the change he sought would not be easy, but he trusted. The soft afternoon light illuminated the streets as Lucas left the store. He walked slowly, hands in his pockets, his mind replaying the events of the previous day and the morning meeting. He had planted a seed of change, but he knew that the real challenge would be to maintain the momentum and ensure that the new values were authentically integrated. As he walked down the avenue, he glanced at the windows of other luxury stores. Each seemed a reflection of its own chain, shiny exclusivity, but often disconnected from the human reality it was meant to inspire. This is just the beginning, Lucas thought, mentally mapping out the next steps to transform not just a store, but the entire culture of his business. Stopping in front of a cafe, he decided to go in. He sat down by the window and ordered a coffee. From there, he could watch the people passing by, people from all walks of life and social classes, each with a unique story to tell. He thought about Carla, her arrogant attitude, and the subsequent humiliation. A soft sigh escaped her lips. Carla was a reflection of a larger problem, the prejudice, superficiality, and misguided approach that many associated with luxury. Although he didn't expect an immediate change in her, he hoped that the experience had left some mark. As he pondered, a luxury car drove by outside that he recognized immediately. It was Carla's sedan. Through the window, he saw her rigid profile, her face still etched with frustration. The car moved slowly forward and disappeared into the traffic, taking with it the echo of a problem that, although distant, was still present in his mind. Lucas took a sip of coffee and took a small notebook out of his pocket. He opened a blank page and wrote one word in large letters: empathy. It was a simple word, but I knew it was the heart of the change he wanted to make. He had learned a lot in the past few days, about his employees, his customers, and most importantly, about himself. His mission was not just to lead a successful business, but also to make it a place where people felt valued and respected, no matter who they were or how they arrived. After finishing his coffee, Lucas stood up and left the cafeteria. He walked to another store in his chain, determined to continue his mission. As he walked through the doors, his gaze scanned every corner, every interaction, looking for opportunities for improvement. Lucas knew that change wouldn't happen overnight, but he was willing to put in the time and effort it took. The incident with Carla was a catalyst, and now, more than ever, he was committed to his vision. As he walked through the store, he greeted the employees with a warm gesture and began to observe with the same attention he had had the day before. Luxury, he thought, should not be in the objects, but in the experience, in the human connection that transformed the ordinary into something extraordinary. And so, Lucas continued, with a new perspective and a renewed purpose, sowing change where before there were only appearances, was pleased to have taken the first step towards a real transformation. History teaches us that true value lies not in appearances, but in how we treat others, regardless of their origin or appearance. In a world where prejudice and superficiality can blind us, it is always worth asking ourselves, how would you have reacted? Would you have judged by appearances, or would you have looked beyond them? Click on the video on the screen to continue this powerful reflection on respect and self-knowledge. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that inspire us to grow and be better every day. See you in the next video.